So, thank you for joining me today, Joe. If you could just tell us briefly who you are, give us a bit of context on your world.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's a real pleasure. So, my name is Jo Cook, and I do two main things. One is that I have my own company called Lightbulb Moment, where for the last 11 years, I've specialised in everything live online learning, virtual classroom, and webinar. I also do lots of other learning and development facilitation and stuff like that, consultancy coaching. But also, I am the editor of trainingjournal.com. And that's something I've been doing since December last year. And I've been absolutely loving it. I've worked for TJ before, and it brings together some journalism skills that I have in my background and my passion for the people profession.
I see you are also extremely active on LinkedIn and panel discussions and featured in various conversations at conferences. So, we are super excited to have you today. Thank you. Okay, I am going to jump right in. Given your experience throughout the profession, what are the biggest changes you're seeing now?
Biggest changes, obviously, if I'd said anything other than AI right now, I think I'd be shot down in flames. Obviously, AI is a huge change and challenge facing our industry at the moment. Excuse me. And I think the issue isn't necessarily just the technology. Obviously, it's everything behind it. It's about the ethics, it's about the use, it's about that pace of that change. But also, it's about who are the humans driving this? Who are the humans using it? What skills do they have? And how can we make this equitable for students at university who can't afford expensive AI tools, for example? So there's all sorts of human elements around it, which obviously the HR, L&D, the people profession need to focus on.
And what is, if we speak about HR and learning, what is the biggest challenge facing the profession right now in terms of what you've said?
I think it's modern work, or that oft-used phrase, future of work. They come together. So there are lots of organizations that are really driving forward in use of things like technology, use of remote work and hybrid work, and using all sorts of tools for really good productivity and communication, health and well-being, all of that really good stuff. But equally, at the other end of the scale and everything in between, are organizations that are requiring people to come into work, creating all sorts of anxiety and challenges around costs for that, as well as the time and the impact on people's working lives and on their personal lives and their mental health. And are they getting the best out of that? Do they have the right technology? Do they have the right processes and attitudes for, quite frankly, a changing world?
I think I'm going to bring the future of work and make it the current state of work, because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
What are some of the fundamental processes you see as necessary currently? I know that's a wide question.
Fundamental processes for current state of work. I think what organizations need to do, however big or small, whatever industry or sector they're in, they really need to look at what is it they're trying to fulfill, not just paying shareholders, but what is it they're trying to fulfill as their vision? What are they producing? What are they helping? What are they bringing to the world and humanity? And therefore, what are the people that they need and the skills that they need to do that? But beyond just skills matrix and training needs analysis or anything like that, but actually fundamentally about the types of attitudes that they need from people. And because attitude and mindset is far more valuable to hire for than specific skill sets that you can hire. But also, I think this needs to look at, how do we operate as a people-oriented function? Do we offer appropriate remote or hybrid work? Do we offer the right policies for people when they're having mental health issues? So we're really treating people the way that they need to be treated and they should be treated at work, so that they are their best selves when they are at work and they are at home as well.
Mm, great points. I want to delve specifically into learning, and I come from outside the people lens. I work in content and I work for a SaaS as well. We're an AI documentation and training platform. So I come from that angle. How should organizations be focusing on learning? Because learning, to me, it seems now needs to happen so quickly and on such an ongoing basis. How should that be approached from your perspective?
There are all sorts of different models, frameworks, approaches that you can take. And within an L&D function, it's important to know about those and be able to apply them to the work that we're doing. But when you're looking up and outside of L&D, if you're talking to the business, as is so often said, i.e. people not in L&D, actually it's about being responsive. It's about synthesizing what's out there. So that means looking around L&D at the different departments you're supporting and just seeing what's going on. So that doesn't mean that they've come to you and said we need time management training. Okay, what's going on behind that? Is that across different departments? Is that across the organization as a whole? What's the systemic issue? And the further up you get in that leadership role, actually, it's about looking up and out about the changes that are going on in the world and tech and all of those different things that we've mentioned previously. Because what's really important then is to be able to bring that together into a coherent strategy and be able to action it. So people who were ready to embrace the technology during COVID, for example, fared a lot better. That didn't mean they had it in place. It didn't mean they were tech savvy. It meant they were like, okay, plot twist, we now need to do something different. Let's dive in and get it done. So learning needs to be much more strategic and responsive at the same time on those kind of two different levels. It needs to be less about the classroom, although that is still absolutely relevant, whether that's a virtual classroom or a physical classroom or any type of e-learning. But also it's so much more. It's about the stretch projects. It's about giving people time to be able to apply what they're doing. It's about the learning transfer and making sure that managers are really there to help support the learning of their direct reports and not just, oh, tick box exercise, we've sent them on a day about whatever topic. So there's a lot to it. It's not just send them on a course. We know that in L&D, it's about being able to get that across the organization, often called learning culture, as a little snapshot, as a little terminology. But it really is about chief executive officers, operating financial learning officers, all of those people coming together and making sure that learning is a priority, because that is actually a business strategy. That's something that will drive your business forward rather than holding it back.
I like that you talk about mindset and the implementation of learning culture. And you've spoken about that being an ongoing process. Is learning culture something different to the culture of the business, or you've mentioned it shouldn't be, but how does that fit into greater culture programs, and how does HR ensure that the business really takes note? Because sometimes it seems to me, as I say, I come from outside HR, it sometimes seems to me that the business does not really pay heed to what the people are saying.
This is a really challenging, thorny area. And if I could give you the answer in a 2-minute soundbite, I absolutely would. I wish I had that silver bullet. So the culture of an organization is not the mission that's written on the wall, obviously. It's about what everybody does on an everyday, minute-to-minute basis. And it's the accumulation and the effect and the impact of that. So when we do talk about learning culture, obviously that's a part of the whole organization. And it could be an entrepreneurial culture. It could be a caring or a creative culture that's driving forward. When people talk about a learning culture, it is about weaving that into the DNA and the behavior of the organization. And so I'm a firm believer in it has to start at the top, and it also has to be something you demonstrate. I'm sure we've all had managers or bosses where they say one thing and kind of do something different themselves. So I remember a manager who would always say, oh, work-life balance is important, finish on time, but they would work late, they'd be in early, I'd get emails at 10 o'clock at night. So I'm getting mixed messages. But also what we need to think about with this is partly everybody needs to be involved in this, but also it needs to be at the organizational level. So it's not just that, oh, within learning and development or within HR, we've got this policy, this strategy, this way of doing things. Because if we don't have that as a part of the whole organization, then there's no point in having a fancy wording in a Word document on SharePoint somewhere. What this means is that actually people in those departments need to be working with managers, with senior stakeholders, with C-suite and so on, in order to work on projects that are going to make an impact to the business. And from there, that's when you imbue the way of working. That's when you decide, okay, we need a coaching strategy for this because that will give us a certain way forward, and so on. So it's much more about the organization and HR working within that, and less about HR having that terrible reputation of only being there to protect the business.
Right.
It's really important that the people professionals work with the senior people in the organization and everyone in order to make sure that this communication happens always round.
And I love the point about it's the way of working, because that makes sense. Because obviously, the better the organization works across the board, the better that is for everyone, including the business.
Yeah.
Okay. I read an article you wrote about work processes.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So we're diving quite specifically now. I read this article about work processes, and I'm wondering, because it's a question we often get, but how do I get people to buy into the processes? Because processes are super boring. Yeah, I'm wondering if you have cracked that.
I'm not sure I've cracked it. Processes can often seem super boring for a reason. They are boring. But without them, work is hard. So the reason I was doing the project that then led to the article about processes is because I was doing a piece of contract work, and every time I came to it, I felt like it was the first time I was doing it. I was always scrabbling around thinking, what do I do, for who, for when? I didn't want people chasing me. I don't want to get told off. I don't want to make a mistake. And therefore, having something that literally says, do this, then this, by this time, include it, do it this way, that's what helps me with my job. And you want consistency. Obviously, you need a good process for that. The way to get the buy-in, I think, it depends a little bit on the roles that people are doing. Certainly, if you're looking at the buy-in of the people you want to follow the process, making it easy. And that was the point of my article, is if it reads easily, if it looks easy to use, if it's in the right place, something as simple as it's got the right name, the right audience. I say in the article, I was using a document, I didn't think it was for me. It's only because I was working on the project I realized, oh, well, I'm supposed to read this document. So all of those things make life easy. And if you can make life easy for someone, that's when they will buy into it. If you're thinking about how do I get sign off in order to get investment to create or develop or update a process, I think you need to be looking at how much does it cost us to do this versus what it could be. So a completely separate example, in a different environment, there was a process I was following, and it was something like 10 steps, and it involved other teams of people to do things to enable me to do my job. So I emailed somebody and said, look, there's this free plugin for the tech that we're using, and we just need to set this up. And then guess what? The process is one step, and I don't need to involve any of you, and I can do my work when I want to. So when you explain things like that and the impact of things, I think that's when you'll start to get the kind of, well, that's a no-brainer. So there's kind of two levels of buy-in I think are important.
I like that. Getting buy-in is super key. Displaying the benefit to, like, marketing, but that's a whole nother conversation. Okay, I want to talk about your personal philosophy and how you've had a very rich career, you've had a very rich work history. What is your personal philosophy you are adopting given the current state of change and moving forward?
It's really interesting you ask about a personal philosophy or approach or vision or whatever you want to call that to my work. I worked in corporate for many years and went on all sorts of training courses on time management and being a manager and your best self and all of those different things that we often get. And we often talked about who our heroes were and what our influences were. And I always felt a bit different about that. I always, oh, I don't know that I've got that. I didn't have a 10-year career plan. And I always felt that was a bit wrong and a bit weird, and maybe I wasn't doing things right. And I tried to go down that road. What I've learned as I've got older, as I've got more experience, which is the joy of getting older, is that none of that was wrong. It was just different.
Mm,
I call myself organic and creative. My mother would say difficult.
mm.
And what that is much more about is being instinctual, trusting your gut. Of course, have plans, have processes and documentation. I'm all a part of that too. So what really drives me, I discovered over the years when I thought about it in a different way and not on those kind of corporate courses, is actually it's about helping people. Fundamentally, that's what I love doing. My company was called Lightbulb Moment because I love the light bulb moment. I love that penny drop when somebody goes, oh, I get it. Or, oh, that's going to make my life so much easier, whether that's something on a spreadsheet or whether that's coaching them about a behavior. I think all of those things are really important. So making sure that you understand you, and that's been a long journey for me to do that, that then can help give you confidence in the decisions that you make for your career, through to how do I write this article? How do I write this email? Do I need to pause on this email and not send it right now because I know that this isn't worded correctly? It will help all of those things when you understand yourself a lot better.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The final question I want to end with, and if you have no add-on to what you've just said, because as you've said, learn to trust yourselves as HR professionals and as people professionals, what is the biggest advice you would give a Gen Z entering as a people professional into the workplace?
The advice that I'd give anybody entering a professional workplace, regardless of their age or generation, is about getting different experiences. I think that experience, that's what age gives you primarily, is different experiences. And being able to have a variety in your work is really important. So for me, it's a driving factor. I get very antsy and I don't like it when I don't have variety. Other people might like consistency and knowing they're doing the same thing every day. So it's about knowing yourself again, but also being able to expand that. And that could be through anything like reading biographies of people that are completely different from you, through to volunteering for different projects. Because what I find is with my contract work, with my training journal work, with my background and experience and working in different industries and sectors, there's something I can bring with me to another part of my work. It helps me to think differently. It helps me to go, oh, we did this over here. If I turn it around and twist it and mold it a bit, could work here. And for someone else, that's, wow, amazing. And for me, it's, oh, I did it over here, so it's easy. So I think those experiences are really important. And whether that's changing jobs or changing roles or projects, or actually having some kind of side hustle outside of work, that business mindset, that entrepreneurial mindset is really important. Even if it's not a side hustle, it could be watching things like The Hotel Inspector or other those.
Right.
They're a bit sensationalist, but it's really easy to sit there and go, why don't you have a policy for this? Why are you investing in that? And it just gets you thinking in different ways.
I must say, whenever I watch Gordon Ramsay's, what's
Yes.
it called?
Kitchen Nightmares.
Yeah, something like that. I'm like, why do you guys not have process?
Yes. It's just like, you've decided to buy a hotel despite never working in customer service, the public sector,
How's
entertainment,
that
anything
going
like
for
that.
you?
Like, yeah, we thought we'd be an easy lifestyle business and we're actually working 18-hour days. Who knew? Like,
What are the challenges or the pitfalls that we are not seeing or that we should be aware of?
I think AI has an amazing potential. It's doing amazing things already. We have to be really careful about the data it gives us, because there are instances where the very nature of AI being brilliant at what it does means it's good at making stuff up. And I've written an article about this for Training Journal, where it just didn't give me A, the full information, and B, in some cases, the correct information. So then if we're doing this on something we don't know much about and it's giving us false information, and there's been instances where it's made up URLs, it's made up scientific papers, things like that, there's a trust issue there that we need to look at. And obviously the technology needs to improve, but that also comes to our skills of deduction, of good questioning, of being able to check the information. Just like any other web page that we go onto, we need to be able to be savvy in that sense. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then otherwise, it's around how do we integrate this in workplaces and have our human integrity? How do we make sure to make the most of what makes us human? Creativity, decision making, that kind of stuff, so that we're having a symbiotic relationship and not just throwing everything onto the AI.
Mm. So bring your AI to work, but don't forget your critical thinking at home.
Yes. So you said that much more succinctly than me.
No, I read a great article the other day that said AI plus HI is the future.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, I am looking forward to your upcoming panels. AI and the playbook for 2024.
What I'm going to be talking about is obviously from a learning angle and how we can personalize learning, but we're also going to be looking at things like productivity, which I think is something we don't talk enough about, but actually it's part of the people profession that we need to be looking at that alongside businesses as well. And of course, AI is part of that. So that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Jo, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.